Thank you, everybody, for logging in, joining this morning. Appreciate that you're all busy in your day jobs, so hopefully the topics that we cover on our Agency and Masters series are useful to you and insightful. And today, hopefully, will be no different. For today, we are covering agency resourcing, which I know from speaking to a lot of the agencies that I work with is a pretty hot topic. Before we jump in, just for those of you who don't know who we are or haven't registered before, I'm Steve. I'm one of the co-founders here at the Agency Works. And as usual for our Agency Master series, I'm joined by my co-pilot and principal consultant, Kate. So thanks for joining us, Kate.
I like that. I've been promoted to co-pilot. That's
Co-pilot,
good.
yeah. Well, you are. I think we've done enough now for you to be co-piloting.
Thanks.
So for this morning's webinar, hopefully it should last around 20-25 minutes. So hopefully plenty of time for you to grab a brew before your next call. So we know that working with hundreds of agencies, that most agencies will win new work and then plan how to resource it later. That's because typically working out capacity can be a bit of a headache. But we also know that it's a really important process. Why? Well, it allows us to answer questions such as, do we need freelancers? Do we need to expand the team? Are you overbooked? Are your team underutilized? And really, how realistic is your revenue forecasting? So on today's session, we'll hopefully be finding out how to calculate your agency's true capacity, confidently forecasting resource requirements, and then using the data to decide when to hire and when to use freelancers, and also including some top tips on how to improve productivity and utilization. All of which I'm assuming, Kate, that you experienced when working in your previous agencies.
Yes, absolutely. So seen this many times, so excited people having just won a new client or a project, throwing resource last minute at work that's not been properly planned out, and then expect a great quality output. We know it won't work and it'll just quickly escalate into chaos, which then causes a flurry of recruitment or committing to freelancers. And we know if your project goes up in flames, it's going to impact on your client and your employee happiness too. So literally burnt down hours, burnt down motivation, and burnt down people.
Not good.
No.
So we know that capacity planning and resource management are both crucial aspects to running an agency. So while they are related, they actually focus on different aspects of managing workload and resources. So before we kind of delve into the webinar any deeper, I think it's worth taking a minute just to highlight the differences between capacity planning and resource management, as they are often perceived as the same thing. So for us, capacity planning involves calculating the production capacity needed to meet the demands of your services. So this means assessing the amount of work that can be handled by the available resources over a specific period, whether that be monthly or annually. Resource management, on the other hand, this involves the efficient and effective deployment of your resources when and where they are needed. So this often means ensuring that the right people are assigned to the right projects at the right time. So while they are distinct practices, they are interdependent and they're both essential for the smooth operation of your agency. Capacity planning ensures that the agency is prepared for future demand, while your resource management ensures that current projects are executed efficiently. And if you balance both, then hopefully you can enhance your performance and still deliver high quality services to your clients. But why does it matter? Well, I've picked out a few things where I think it's important to manage capacity planning. The first is realistic revenue forecasting. Knowing how much capacity you have or how many hours you can sell means that you can then forecast the realistic revenue you can achieve with that current team. That also includes identifying what hours are available, typically by resource type. So for example, how many hours of a designer do we have, or a copywriter, or a developer? Crucially, it absolutely helps inform our recruitment decisions. If you're constantly selling more of a resource each month, then you potentially may need to recruit. Or if it's just a peak, then you know you may need a freelancer. But either way, you're using the data to look back at resource usage and to forecast demand over the next 3 to 6 months. Then you'll be making decisions based on good data and not someone's gut feel. It also, I think, it's something that a lot of agencies we speak to struggle with, but it's reducing the need to keep using freelancers to plug those gaps. If you have better visibility of your capacity, you can make decisions to bring work forward or delay work. But if it's just a peak in demand, then this can hopefully reduce your need for the use of freelancers. On the flip side of that, it can also see where you have a lack of work and where you need to sell more of that resource type. And finally, if you are taking on projects when you're properly resourced and not over or under promising anyone, you'll be able to deliver projects on time and hopefully have happy clients. However, it's about also having a happy and productive team. We know that creative people need time to think. So when you're over capacity or things are running too crazy, people don't have the time to actually do good work. And we know that this is a quick road to burnout, unproductive, unhappy teams. So we need to remember that, yes, your team are a team and pool of resources, but they're also people and they need to be carefully managed. And that was a nice picture from our happiness day. Not sure what face you're pulling there, Kate, but
No, I think I'd had a few dark and stormies
it
then.
looks that way. I think it descended from there.
So you'd think the basic formula is pretty straightforward, right? Working hours times number of people. But no, as we know, agencies aren't as simple as that. So scrub that equation. Not every minute of every hour of the working day is chargeable. We've got tea breaks, loo breaks, meetings, briefings, lunch, happiness days. They all add up. Plus, there'll be times when team members are working on internal work, new business and pitches, and this will fluctuate and vary across different teams and individuals. So we need to make our simple formula a little more sophisticated to see the true picture. To get an accurate picture, we need to look at each individual's capacity, which is their workable hours times their utilisation rate. So, for example, we have a copywriter there on the screen. It works 37.5 hours a week. So their capacity is 145 hours per month. That's their full working time, approximately, give or take a few bank holidays. Times 65% utilisation equals 94.25, so that's a quarter of an hour, hours per month. But how do we work out those utilisation rates? So they can vary by role and responsibility, and there's no one size fits all. So you'll need to look at each person within your agency on an individual basis. And here's how. So first of all, interview each team member, ask them how much time they spend on non-billable work. This will vary from person to person and it's not set in stone either. But you might find some team members are more frequently put on internal jobs than others. And take a look back at their timesheets over the last year. This will give you an accurate picture of time spent, as long as the timesheets have been logged correctly, that is. And don't just do a month or two, as I mentioned there, as you might catch somebody on the holiday season or when they're temporarily working on an internal project. So the broader the time frame, the better. And consider your plans for the next year. Have you got any major internal projects coming up, or new business initiatives that will divert people's time, which goes back to the individual aspect. Which of your team members are most likely used for non-client work? And lastly, calculate the target chargeable hours, aka their target utilisation, by deducting their non-billable hours from their total hours to give you the number of chargeable hours, which you can then turn into a percentage.
Cool. So that's the theory behind it. I suppose the easiest way to illustrate this is to look at a practical example. So here we have a lovely spreadsheet. Where I've taken the scenario of a 16-person agency, and what I've done here is what we see a lot with agencies is at the start of the year, breaking down your agency by department, by resource type. But what we've done here is we've calculated the contracted hours, because that could be different. What that means in terms of days of the year, we've deducted the holiday allowance, and that gives us the total that Kate mentioned, which is your workable days or hours. Then we can multiply those hours by each of the individual utilization rates, because as you can see, the utilization rates may be different per resource. Then we can multiply that by their charge rate to give us the available charge for the year. So in my example here, my 16-person agency, I have in total, at the start of the year, 27,500 hours. When we apply the utilization rates, that's more like 16,800. What we can then do is start to roll it up by departmental skill set and divide it by 12 to give us our monthly average and value based on your average charge rates. So we often see this forming part of an agency's fee forecast for the year. So the first thing we need to do is calculate the number of available hours, and then we can then multiply that forward so that we should see what our target income should be both monthly and annually for the year. But you need to bear in mind that this is just an average. As we don't know when we're planning this, when holidays are going to fall, and bank holidays will obviously kind of have an impact as well. But it does give you a view of how many hours you have available and how much you should be selling each month. And I think it's a useful tool for sales to see so they can focus on selling the right amount of time and resources each month.
And once you know your capacity, you can confidently forecast your resourcing requirements. This will enable you to assess the need for freelance support versus recruiting more resource. So start by looking at your estimated time on your confirmed work versus your capacity available to determine if you have enough resource. If you don't, it might be time to hire a temporary freelance support. Remember to use your truthful estimate of hours, not your commercial quote to your client. And we say this on most of our webinars, I think, Steve.
Yep.
And we'll touch on it again later. Next, we're going to bring in time estimates on pipeline work, known as opportunities in Synergist. This will start giving you a longer term resourcing picture. Ideally, do this on weighting or probability of winning work. And then we can build a report of confirmed work and the higher probability pipeline, and it will help you make an informed decision on whether to use freelance support or whether it's time to recruit. But how do we do this and what does it look like? Well, we could do it manually with a good old spreadsheet that Steve loves, or we could use a system such as Synergist, just drop it in there, where you can slice and dice the information by team, charge code, or even team member, depending on the granularity. The report on the screen collates everything, so you can see figures at a glance. And what we have here is, in our first column, our live job estimates. This brings in all estimates in a given time frame on our live confirmed work. Second along is our pipeline estimates, bringing in time on estimates on opportunities over a certain probability. Target available is bringing in our available hours calculated from those utilised rates we spoke about, minus any holiday booked into the calendar. And the percentage at the end is calculated by the estimated hours versus the time available. So using a report like this over a longer period, say 6 months, enables you to preempt any resource issues before they arise. Where there are gaps, sales can push the opportunities through. And if there is an excess of hours, then you can see what roles are needed, either as freelance or new recruits. If recruitment is needed, then forecasting gives you enough time to do this. As we know, advertising, the shortlisting and the interviewing, not to mention the sort of the notice periods, that time can all add up. So having the data far enough in advance stops you having to make those unprofitable last-minute decisions to fulfill those work commitments.
So, how do we go about getting it right? We know it's really important. So again, what we've done here is pick out hopefully some top tips for you on how to improve what you're doing. First thing is about setting realistic utilization rates for each individual member of your team. Again, as Kate said, factor in admin tasks, meeting breaks, training when you're calculating those. And going back to what Kate said, interviewing them and working out and getting them to commit to what's internal and what's external will allow you to get to a kind of a more realistic utilization target. But you also need to recognize that you might have some members of the team that are more experienced. They can deliver tasks faster, or they can take on more complex tasks. And if you do that, then that should be have a bearing in terms of how you calculate their utilization figures.
And make sure you're selling the right hours. So aligning your sales targets with realistic capacity. So ensuring the sales team understands the agency's capacity limits and doesn't overpromise to clients, which sales are very good at. And offer clients flexible options that align with your team's capacity, with realistic timelines. And set up regular communication between the sales and the ops teams to ensure alignment on project scopes and those timelines again.
Totally. As we keep going on about accurate estimating, not quoting. So for those of you who use Synergists will understand the principle, but the idea of having an internal estimate of what you think the job should take, which is what we're going to use for our forecasting, which could be different to commercially what you quote your client. When you develop your estimates, then they should be precise, and we should be looking at data from previous projects to help you create those. You should involve your team members who have had relevant experience of working on previous projects, but also including that buffer time that we talked about previously for any kind of unforeseen delays or additional work being added.
I do believe we've got a webinar on that, Steve.
I think we have a webinar for most things actually, Kate. So yeah.
You can find them on our YouTube channel. So the fourth one there is honest forecasting. So make sure you base forecasts on data and realistic assessments rather than overly optimistic assumptions. So avoid those happy ears. And conduct regular reviews and updates of forecasts to reflect current realities. Ensuring transparent communications with stakeholders about potential risks and uncertainties.
You also need to set timelines that are realistic and also attainable. And if you have the opportunity, which you can do in Synergist, but again, breaking projects into smaller tasks, again, with attainable deadlines. But when you're doing that, then we need to consult with your team to ensure that the timelines that you're setting up are realistic, because it needs to be based on not only what you know, but on their capabilities and their workload. But again, we also need to develop in a contingency plan to cover any potential delays or obstacles that will appear.
And the weekly capacity meetings, or more if you're really busy, maybe bi-weekly. But these meetings are needed to discuss current utilization rates and adjust plans as needed, get updates on ongoing projects and adjust capacity plans based on those current progress. And also future planning, looking ahead at upcoming projects and prepare for future capacity needs.
Something that we do on a weekly basis. So although we're an agency, we do it every Monday afternoon.
Yep.
Because this is equally as important to us as it is to our agencies. The next one that we're looking at is, it's once we've kind of planned that, is actually making sure it's booked. And so it's accurate scheduling. As Kate mentioned previously, you could do this in a spreadsheet, in a tool, but we need to regularly check that the work is proceeding according to the schedule. And if it's not, obviously make adjustments. And again, make sure that we're communicating the schedules clearly to team members to ensure that they're aware of any tasks or any deadlines that we've agreed with the client.
And continuously monitor and review those utilisation rates we spoke about earlier. Maybe think about implementing a time tracking tool. I don't know if you can think of any, Steve, to accurately measure the actual utilisation. And make sure you're analysing that data regularly to identify trends and areas for improvement. And don't forget to use those insights gained to refine your capacity and adjust utilisation rates as needed.
Cool. So, as with every webinar, what we try to do is provide some takeaways. There's only a short amount of time to cover everything that we want to go through. So we've picked out 3 here as being our kind of top 3 takeaways. For me, the first one is where we started, the difference between capacity planning and resource management, and the fact that they are, they both exist side by side, but they are different metrics. Capacity being a longer term view of available hours to sell, ensuring that you have the capacity to deliver projects for the timeframes that you sold, but also enabling you to create your own projected annual and monthly fee incomes. Resource management, shorter term, making sure projects run efficiently, on budget, on time, and getting the right people on the right projects at the right time.
Absolutely. And accurate estimating, one of our favorites in every webinar. But it's because it's so fundamental to agency reporting. And for this particular episode, we need it to enable us to resource plan against our capacity, with accuracy enabling us to ensure, easy for somebody to say, with accuracy enabling us to ensure we aren't just throwing resource on the fire.
And finally, for me, looking at all this data and calculating available hours and resourcing and fee incomes, hopefully does ensure that you don't take on too much, because we want to avoid having stressed teams and productive teams, which then will hopefully mean that you have happy teams and happy clients. So that has whizzed by 20 odd minutes in terms of what we've covered. Thanks once again for joining us on today's session. As normal, if you need any further advice or you want to speak to us about any topics that we've covered, then please do get in touch either via LinkedIn or email or through the agency works. We will be sending out a copy of this recording later today. And as you can see there, we've been given the summer off for the next webinars. Both Kate and I are on holiday in July, not together, but we are both away. So the next agency masters webinar will be on Wednesday, the 21st of August, and it will be to do with project scope creep. So we'll ping you details of that later, along with a copy of recording. As we've mentioned previously, we have done previous webinars on different topics. So along with the agency masters, we do have the popular A-game series as well that Jay runs. So you can find those all on our YouTube channel. But once again, thanks, Kate, for jumping on today. And thanks, everybody, for joining. And we look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks, everyone.